Hello and welcome to Seahawks Scouting. My name is Brandon Kane. I know I've been away for a while, but we are back now, badder and bigger than ever. And I hope to be getting some more content out to you guys here as we go along here over the next couple of months into the college football season. Of course, this upcoming year is going to be a very important one for my Seattle Seahawks in particular. We are sitting with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks in next year's draft. Many people think that we are almost in a semi-tanking type state for this upcoming year, meaning we very well could be in the crosshairs for that number 1 overall pick in the next upcoming draft. And I think sitting at the head of this in importance has got to be how Seattle views the quarterback prospects coming out in next year's draft. Because indeed, I do believe if not one of those first round picks, many of those picks will be packaged together so that they can go get the quarterback that they're looking to snag. And what's interesting about this from my perspective is when you looked at this last draft, there were a dearth of options. The NFL told us this. We only saw 1 quarterback taken in the first round, and it was all the way to the 20th pick at that. And then we saw no quarterbacks taken in the second round. Indeed, when I look to this upcoming draft next year, I think it's going to be completely the opposite. Maybe Mother Nature is somehow finding and regaining back the balance or the counterbalance to this year's draft. As right now, I think and believe there's going to be at least 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, and that number could go even higher. There is certainly a potential here that we see this as one of the best all-time quarterback drafts, if by surely maybe the quantity of upper-level good ones versus having, let's say, generational type guys across the board. Nonetheless, I think it has a good chance to rival that famed 1984 draft, the one that was from Elway to Marino, with a lot of those guys taken in the first round. And so I've got a stack of guys I've taken a little bit of an early look at here that I'm going to unveil for you guys. My initial list of my top 5. Now, what I want to say is that this is not a list that is fixed. It's in fact going to move all over the place. And I want to explain a little bit my reasoning process behind it. But let's remember with these kind of lists that come out early on before the start of the college football season is that we have a whole college football season to play out. And that is going to weigh so much more into the evaluation process and where these guys truly are going to deserve to go versus where we're at right now, where this is as much kind of a fun exercise for where we're starting. Nonetheless, I feel pretty good about this list early on and where I have guys slotted. And so I'm going to unveil this list and we'll keep updating it throughout the course of the season. It's going to be fun to kind of track and monitor these guys. One thing I do want to set up first before we look at this list is that when you look at the Seattle's quarterback and the next quarterback they're going to look to go take, we shouldn't look at it through the lens of who's just the most talented guy. Who's just the guy with the most upside? I think that's a little bit of a fool's errand in to look at it this way. The steps that this front office and coaching staff have taken over this last 6 months, over this last offseason, has been indicative of the fact that they're telling you they're going to lean into their 2012 blueprint model, 2011-2012 blueprint model, which is essentially to build up a very talented, good team across the board and get that quarterback in as a finishing piece. And then the quarterback that you're bringing in is not going to be asked to tilt the field at every turn, is not going to be asked to throw from a high volume attack. You're not asking everything to be then built around him. This team's going to want to run the ball, play defense, and play great special teams. The quarterback is going to factor into that. Yes, you do need him to still play well. You do still need him to make certain throws. We do still need a talented guy for that job. But I think it makes it a little bit different in how you evaluate this to say, we need a guy who can handle running this offense, who can be proficient within a certain amount of throws, rather than needing a ton of throws to be proficient in. And he also probably needs to be pro-ready. That was something that Russell Wilson was when he came out of Wisconsin. Pro-ready. This guy you can put under center from day one. Maybe you looked at him from a ceiling standpoint, and even this was proven untrue, but maybe they looked at it from a ceiling standpoint, not the Hawks, but from a league standpoint. Yeah, the guy will be pro-ready, but he may never give you any kind of star level of play. He'll just be what he is when he walks it out the door from day one, which is the worst thing to always have at every turn. And I don't think it'll be the worst thing for our Seahawks. So they're going to look at guys to me that are a little bit more refined rather than rough around the edges. Find the guy that can come in and he's got maybe a little bit of a bigger arm, maybe a little bit of mobility, but he can fit within the context of this West Coast offense, run it appropriately, operate off 25, 26, 27 attempts a football game, and still find a way to be proficient within that. And I think that it makes it easier on rookie quarterbacks to tell them, this is all we're going to need you to do. Find your productivity within this, as opposed to bringing that young quarterback in and asking him to become Superman for you right from the jump. So with that said, let's go to my list here. And this is my initial list of my top 5 guys. There are some other guys we'll speak about here, and I'll explain a little bit of why I didn't put them on this list out the jump. There's a lot of controversy out there amongst the quarterbacks that exist about who likes who and who doesn't like who. I'm going to try to explain these top 5 and why I put them where I put them initially here, and we'll see if this changes out over the course of the year. All right, so let's count it down from 5. Number 5, Tyler Van Dyke from the Miami Hurricanes. Van Dyke is a fun quarterback to watch. He has an understanding of what he's trying to do out there. He knows where he's going with the ball. He's rarely confused about where he needs to put it. He throws with good arm strength, good anticipation, fairly good accuracy, though I would say that his accuracy is inconsistent. Sometimes it's pinpoint and right at the only place he could have completed a pass. Other times he will wildly miss on even short throws. The inconsistency I found to be a bit maddening, but again, that's one of the things you'll see most take a jump and take a leap then into the next year, first last year as he goes into this college football season. That's where I'm expecting his growth mainly to bear out the most. But I feel like this kid can come in and process quickly. He understands how to move within the pocket, though he's not a very mobile guy. He knows how to do more of the subtle movements within the pocket, a step to his left, step to his right, step up, climb the pocket, those type of things he does reasonably well. And he's absolutely insane down along the red zone. He can put balls in he can lay it up in there if he's got to throw a fade route. He can throw it in with some mustard if he's got to put it in on a short area and really fire it in there. And he's very accurate down on the red zone. There's seemingly sometimes a difference of his accuracy between the 20s versus when he's actually down there near the red zone. But if you give this guy, as I look to the pro level, a guy like a Pitts in Atlanta, a guy that can go up and get the ball and high point a ball, he's going to put it right where they need to get it. And he's going to be very efficient down there as far as you get him in the red zone. I like how he goes about his business. I see him kind of as a Kirk Cousins kind of quarterback. Not as much of the deep ball that Cousins has, but maybe a little bit more accuracy upside on some of the shorter stuff than what we sometimes see from Cousins. If he can kind of get that part of his growth to take that step and that leap ahead this upcoming year. Number 4 on my list is going to be Bryce Young out of Alabama. Had a sensational year last year, a ton of production. I can't argue with any of that. Does play a little bit out of the spread concept situation for the most part there in Alabama, which means you're going to need a little bit more of him under center at times when you bring the pro game, which means there's a little bit of time for his development you got to probably bake in there as you bring him along. But he made some wild throws last year, and he has a very good live arm, despite the fact the guy looks about 5'11" on the football field and very slight. I do think he has a good chance to sneak up into the back half of the first round, like Van Dyke. I don't see these guys as upper level first round picks. I see them in the 20s kind of quarterbacks is where they would be taken. And again, he's got as many wild throws on his tape from last year as any college quarterback in the NCAA last year. But we come back to the size part that I worry from my standpoint. And I could be a little bit off here in that I've had this sort of built in after 10 years of watching Russell Wilson play the position, which is that I've really come to a firm understanding that you do have to work around a smaller quarterback. There's now this going narrative out there, and you've seen it with guys like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield taken in the first number 1 overall in first rounds, where NFL organizations are sort of completely ignoring the fact that they have a quarterback who's a little bit less in build, a little bit smaller in build. Quarterbacks have to overcome that. They've got to overcome that through a variety of different ways. You can't just always lean back and say, well, the offensive line needs to create passing lanes for the guy. No, the guy just can't see over the top of it at times. When you have a guy like Young who's able to play within that spread formation and everything in shotgun, that does provide them a little bit of an extra chance to be able to see over the top of all of those giants that exist on a football field. But nonetheless, after watching for 10 years, as great as Russell was over this 10-year period here in Seattle, you did at times have to sort of overcome his height limitations. And I just come back to over and over again the thing you see with Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray. Both of these guys will struggle to throw on short, intermediate, middle of the field throws. Those throws where they can see at their least from behind center. And I don't think that that's something that I want to bring in on my next quarterback, especially a quarterback I bring in the first round, that the first thing I almost have to think of out the gate is, how am I going to overcome this deficiency in his game? First, having a guy out there that's more of the 6'3", 6'4" guy who can just see over the top and let it rip and make those middle of the field throws still a vibrant part of what he does. He also has a reasonable amount of mobility. I wouldn't go back there and say that he's in that Russell Wilson mode back there, but he can certainly move around enough, and he's fleet of foot enough, which he's going to have to be if he's 5'11 and as slight as he is, because I do worry a bit about him holding up as we go on in the future. The main thing I'd like to see him into this next year from him as we go forward is adding a little bit more weight, getting a little bit more sturdier. But again, I think he's going to put enough wow throws on tape, and he's going to do enough here over the last couple of years in his production at Alabama that a team's going to jump up and say, we'll overcome it. We just think he's got a good enough arm that he can be a good enough player that's not going to hold him back. And again, I still do look at him as a first round pick, even if I've got him fourth on my list. Number three on the list for me is KJ Jefferson. And in my opinion, I do this live stream show on my main channel, The Hawk's Nest. And KJ Jefferson has been one of the most singularly controversial players, or has drawn as much, I think, argument and debate back and forth about where he is. And you have a lot of people that are really going to the mat with him, where they'll say, this guy's the number one quarterback in this next year's draft, hands down, bar none, no argument. And I like him a lot. Kid out of Arkansas, wears the number one jersey with the little towel off the side, looks just like Cam Newton. He's a couple inches shorter than Cam, but he looks just like Cam Newton. And when I say that, I mean that in every way that you can almost imagine. The way he runs with the ball, very Cam Newton-esque, and how he kind of carries the high running style. He can still kind of change direction despite being a bit of a bigger player like Cam could be. He basically turns into a big running back the second he starts to run with the ball. And he is very fleet of foot. No doubt about that at all. He also has the thing with Cam that Cam had as well, which is that the lower half of their body and the upper half of their body never seem to talk to each other at the same time. They're both always doing two different things. And so like Cam was through the entirety of his career, it was all arm throwing. It was all upper half and how he was going to generate his velocity and accuracy and everything else. And the lower half just got forgotten about a lot of the times. Didn't get the foot in the right direction, didn't get his base correct. Sometimes would get his base a little bit too wide. You see the very same thing here with KJ Jefferson, where just the mechanics aren't always there. Now, I will say this, unlike Cam, whose lack of mechanics you could see on throws consistently, where he would be overthrowing guys and it would be wildly off the mark, I don't think you're going to say the same thing necessarily on the college tape we've seen so far with Jefferson. He has been relatively accurate, but that's the part that he's got to clean up as we go into this year, is clean up some of the mechanics within the pocket and how you're doing that. I'd like to see him do a little bit more processing at times. He's running, as I say, it's all Cam Newton. He is running literally the Carolina Panthers 2015 offense. It's the read option out of shotgun, one read and then run kind of football, which can work at the college level and you could be productive at that in the college level. But it's not something I think you're going to be able to run at the NFL level yet now anymore. I think Cam could do it back in 2015. We're going to be moving into 2022 this year. I think the NFL is constantly evolving, and I don't know that a quarterback can run an offense in that same way at the NFL level. I could be proven wrong on this, but I'm just not quite there with that with KJ and saying that. He's a guy you're going to have to, if you're talking about bringing him here, going to have to work a lot with his footwork, work a lot with him under center, because he's not going to have done any of that at Arkansas. And that brings me some worries with him about, Seattle picking him. I do think that he's probably a top 12 type pick in the first round. I think he's a marvelous talent at the position. I'm going to look forward to seeing him play this upcoming year. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a maturation process that's going to have to occur with this kid. That means you're not going to get the early returns. And remember, I'm talking about the Seahawks trying to fit to their 2012 blueprint, which is to great team around him, young quarterback I bring in who hits the ground running, doesn't have to play like a superstar, but has to operate as that point guard of the offense. And I think that this kid might not be able to fit within that exactly from day one. Long term, he might have the best upside of any of these quarterbacks in this draft, but I think it might take him a little bit of time to get to that point. Number 2, CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. Now, there are some folks out there that won't even touch an Ohio State quarterback, no matter how talented they are, no matter how good they are, because there's been so many that have burned so many NFL franchises over the years, even as they've been picked high, even as they've been highly productive in college football. I make the exception so far for this kid because, frankly, there's just not a lot in his game that I'm able to pick apart. Maybe he doesn't have the elite uber athleticism you'd look for in the position and that you're getting in other guys out there, like maybe even a KJ Jefferson and his ability to run with the ball, but he can make every throw in the book. I found his mechanics to be very clean. I love his delivery. I think he can throw it off platform if he's being rushed to. He doesn't have to, he doesn't run it like a robot out there in the quarterback position. I would like to see him make a few more throws on tighter windows and whatnot when you have all of the receiving talent that Ohio State does have. And they tend to run a very balanced attack, so it's not even like they're just throwing a million times back there. But there were times where he's throwing to guys that are 3, 4, 5 yards wide open versus their other players. Still, there are those throws also within there. The throws to Wilson, for instance, where he would do his acrobatics, and you've got CJ putting it on a spot where only he can get it, where only he can go make that great play, and not only putting him in position to make that play, but putting him in that position where he is only that guy. I like how careful he is with the ball. I like how accurate he is with the ball. I think if you put him within a structured offense from day one after the course of this upcoming season, he's going to be able to fit within that structure right from the jump for you and go. And good enough athleticism, not a complete statue back there. Strong arm, throws with good anticipation. There wasn't, again, a lot that I could look at with his game and go, this needs work, this needs to be cleaned up. Now, on the other side of that, I will say about CJ is even though I'm projecting him here into sort of a top 10 first-round state, he's almost just boringly great. There's not this one part or attribute about his skill set that makes you go, oh my God, this arm or this mobility. It's that it all kind of comes together in totality for CJ and what he is as a prospect. And you have to look at the whole picture rather than just locking on one little individual part of it. But he is very far along in his readiness at the pro level. Give him another season in college football. I think he's going to be ready to start day one, getting to the NFL level at that point. Again, that's got to measure in and impact a little bit of how we view this list, because my Seahawks need a guy who's ready to start from day one. I need a guy that can get in there and play. Doesn't have to play amazing, doesn't have to play Pro Bowl, doesn't have to play MVP level. He's just got to be proficient and not be in over his head, not deer in the headlights kind of look like we saw out of Jordan Love this last year when he took on the Kansas City Chiefs in that one game that Aaron Rodgers missed, when he had a broken toe at that point. This brings me to number one. Number one on my early, far too soon, far too early, this is far too quick, quarterback prospect list this upcoming season. And this is going to be Will Levis out of Kentucky. This is another guy like KJ Jefferson who's drawing a lot of controversy, a lot of varied opinion by fans. Some don't think he's even a first-round quarterback. Some don't understand what's so good about him. Others love him to death. Certainly there's a big contingent within the Pacific Northwest of I know, Seahawks commentators on YouTube and whatnot that have been banging the drum for him. So let me break down a little bit of why I'm in on Levis at this moment. Number one, Kentucky is running the Los Angeles Rams offense, which is also the offense we just so happen to be running here in Seattle with Waldron, who came from the Rams. So you're getting the opportunity with a quarterback who through these last couple of years, last year and this upcoming season, who's had the opportunity to fit himself within the exact same type of offense you run. That to me is going to go very far to him being able to hit the ground running from day one, having a guy like that. I feel like he's got the cleanest delivery of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. His mechanics are smooth. His footwork is right. He doesn't get himself too wide with his base. He's always stepping into his throws. He throws with good velocity. There's probably guys like KJ Jefferson that have technically a stronger arm and throw with more power, but he doesn't have a weak arm by any respect. It's above average. He can put some juice on it when he needs to. He can get some smoke coming off that thing when he needs to. I like the accuracy he throws with. I've seen him on Kentucky throws having to throw into at times some very small windows. I kind of like this. Some people have him at Kentucky working against him, but for me, it kind of works for him. He didn't have a stacked Kentucky squad. He didn't have a ton of guys up front to help him do the work like you get it in Alabama or at a Georgia. He was going to have to carry the day. He was going to have to shoulder a heavy part of that burden at that point and overcome sometimes not great pass protection for him up front. You saw this in a game with Georgia last year, where Georgia, beat the brakes off Kentucky. But if you watch that game and how Levis played, he played great, considering he's under pressure every play, and it's coming from all sides. And Georgia's running that blitz game that they ran, and he just doesn't know where he's getting. He's getting the hell beat out of him, but he's still making throw after throw in that game when he's given the opportunity. And that just stands out to me. I love his toughness in the pocket. I love his control in the pocket. He can go through multiple progressions and reads, which I don't always see from quarterbacks. So often in the college level, it's one read and then I'm running, or it's one read and then I'm throwing it away. And with this guy, I can see him sit sometimes patient in the pocket, even when he shouldn't have that patience. When he's got his offensive line up front that's not holding it down, he still will stand tall back there and take that hit if he has to. He also runs really well, sort of got some shades of at times a smaller Josh Allen with how he moves the ball in his hands. I like that fact that he's got that mobility. If I'm going to have a quarterback that I bring in, and I'm managing the amount of throws he has, I'm in that 25 throws a game kind of mold of things, then to have a guy that can have some mobility on the other side of that too, and can occasionally, if I've got a 3rd and 3, he can run for 4 or 5 yards. The defense has to account for him, that they don't just get to ignore him. I like how all that works together in his game. Now, he is a little bit of an older prospect, but again, for some, this is a negative. For me, this is a positive. I don't look at this next quarterback as this is the guy that's got to be here for the next 10 years. I look at the next quarterback and say, who's here for the next 4 to 5 years? Then the model that the Seahawks are building upon, the blueprint they're building upon, is that 2012 blueprint. And I think that they look at it in retrospect like we got away from that blueprint. We got into, we got the star quarterback, we got to pay the star quarterback, and we got to do it like everybody else is doing. Whereas they should just be doing it how they do it. And it may work or it may fail and it may be great, but it is their way. Commit to your process. Stay with your process. Don't deviate from it just because people tell you that's how you have to do it. Everyone else is doing it this way. I like that they're going more of this other approach, and I think it can bring about success. It has brought about success. When they got to the Super Bowl, the 2 times they did over the last 10 years, their quarterback was making 0.55% of the salary cap, and then the next year, 0.88% of the salary cap. If you don't think that that factors in, at least to a small degree, you're kidding yourself. So that's my early list so far. It will be a list subject to change, but either way, there are other guys on this list too that could also be added. Richardson from Florida, the kid that they used to call AR-15, but he's now changed his name. So he's going to be out there. He only has about 47 attempts last year, so we just don't have a lot to go off of. But from a physical ability standpoint, he's awesome. He's got everything you look for from a talent standpoint. Boston College's guy by the name of Phil Jurkovic, who last year was injured, or he might have been in last year's draft. He'll now come up into this year's draft. He plays at Boston College, and he somewhat looks very similar to me to a Matt Hasselbeck type. I know it's kind of lazy to pick up a player who played at the same college, but if you look at them structurally and how they throw, the kind of the over-the-top delivery, same kind of mobility stuff, he's kind of got to that game. He's a guy to take a look and watch. Cameron Ward coming to Washington State as a transfer is another guy that really the tape is fun to watch on him. Both him and Levis, to me, are the 2 early gunslingers of this draft. Just the 2 guys back there that'll just whip it anywhere. They'll make any kind of throw they need to make. They're not scared. They play completely fearless. He's in that same mold, and it'll be interesting to see what maybe he can do at Washington State. Got the kid out of Stanford, big 6'6" kid who's also in play here. He's a guy to watch. Kid out of Tennessee, Herndon. Kid plays wild, arms and legs going in every different direction at once. But again, a lot of athleticism there and a fairly live arm overall on top of it. These guys could be adding in to the bunch. So this list is not fixed. It's not set. We could see there end up being 5, 6, even 7 quarterbacks taken in next year's first round. Again, understanding this last first round draft only had 1 taken. So that could push that many more to be taken in next year's draft. You got teams like Houston that are going to be looking for a quarterback. Detroit's probably going to be looking for a quarterback at that time. I'm expecting a lot of these guys to go. We're going to keep them tracked. We're going to keep them monitored here at Seahawks Scouting and also over at my main channel, The Hawks Nest. But thank you for watching. I appreciate all the subs that we've had here over this offseason on Seahawks Scouting, and I do promise we will be getting some more content out to you guys shortly.